Good morning and welcome to those of you joining us virtually and those of you present here at All Souls Unitarian Church of Indianapolis. I'm Rick May, serving as the worship associate for today's worship service. If you are visiting us this morning, we are glad you are here with us. We welcome you and invite you to bring with you this morning your whole self and all of your lived experience as you join us in worship. In a few moments, we will open our service with reading of the covenant and chalice lighting. We begin our services with these rituals so that we are reminded that we must continually renew our promise to live into our covenant. Simply put, our purpose is to put love into action. We say our covenant as a way to remember and live out the community of love and justice we aim to be. Our topic this morning is on how Unitarian Universalists as individuals can work as one in a congregation to serve each other and to serve the world around us. Our service today will be followed by the second Town Hall open question conversation. How do we make change and support others in making change in the wider world? Again, welcome. Let us worship together.
I think it's been about, it's about 30 years ago that, can you hear me all yet? Not quite. Testing 1, 2. That's it. There we go. Maybe if I move down here.
It's on now.
It's on now. About 30 years ago, I was new in ministry. I was in Colorado, and Colorado a lot was happening around women's reproductive choice issues, and I got very involved in Planned Parenthood, and back then what was called the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. And I went to a meeting one day. There was going to be a vigil, a demonstration at the State House in support of women's reproductive rights. And so I went to the meeting, and you know, I grew up in a jewelry business, and I've always kind of worn my tie and my white shirt. And so I go to this meeting, and I'm the only person in a jacket and a tie. So I thought, well, maybe the jacket's too much, so I took the jacket off. But as more and more people came in, I was standing at the side. It was in a church sanctuary, and I'm standing off to the side, and everybody started staring at me. There was a speaker, and there was some planning being done, and people were just staring at me. And I thought, I'm looking at myself, did I wear something really wrong, or something wrong with my... Well, as it turns out, they stopped the meeting early, and I thought, wow. And then a lot of the people were just kind of looking at me as they walked out like, why did you come? You messed up the meeting. And I thought, oh my gosh. It just turned out they thought because I was wearing a white shirt that I was a Republican, you know. And you know, the thing is that in Colorado at the time, there were old-style Republicans who might have worn a white shirt and gone to a meeting like that and felt like they belonged there and were in support of it. One of the things about being a Unitarian Universalist is that we always have the challenge of seeing beyond what we think we see. When we meet someone, when we're getting to know somebody better than we have, even if we've known them for many years. I had a fella come to the church one day where I was serving in Buffalo, New York, and he was struggling because he thought, how is it that people, you can be a congregation like yours and have people with so many different beliefs? And The old mythology was important to him. He thought he wanted to go to heaven. He thought. He wasn't quite sure. And I said, well, let me explain it this way. I figure that, and I was using this traditional language because it was helpful for him. I said, I think what happens is that when God wants us to grow in a way, that if it's a Republican person wearing a tie and a white shirt, God's going to reveal herself to him as a black lesbian woman. And likewise for, say, the DRE here, I know she would let me say this about her. She's the big challenge for her is going to be the guy in the white shirt who's a Republican, and that's, I think, one of the joys and challenges of being a Unitarian Universalist, is learning how to appreciate one another across some really great differences. And what better day to understand those kinds of challenges than a day when we talk about how do we make change together and make change in the world in a way that brings justice to all of us, we hope. Good morning. Welcome to All Souls.
Good morning, beloveds. I've got a slew of announcements this morning. I will go quite quickly. You will notice that in the pew, if you're a visitor to our congregation and have not heard me say this before, there are some yellow cards. These are the connection cards that we use as a linkage between you and All Souls during the week. Please do take a moment to fill those out during the service. We appreciate it very much. On Sunday, March 20th, William Harvey is in concert at UUI, our sister Unitarian church on the other side of town, to honor Afghan refugees. That will take place at 4 p.m., so you are invited to join. That's a special violin concert. Also, it's spring, and spring means that the All Souls Grove, the beautiful diversity of trees that we planted here at the church over the COVID shutdown, again needs watering. So please contact Indra Frank if you would like to help watering with that. Also, the All Souls Butterfly Garden, which many of you notice right away when you come in. If you look out the back windows in the atrium, you really can't help but see it. There's always some good cleanup work that needs to be done out there once the temperature's warm, and we know that the pollinators are finished overwintering in that space. So please, again, reach out to Indra Frank if you are interested in joining the Butterfly Garden team. And please join us for our Open Questions Town Hall. I'm very excited about this. It's after service today. If you have a child with you, I will be here to provide childcare to support kids in either being in that meeting and participating or being out of it, whichever they seem to need the most. As always, please silence your electronic devices upon entering the sanctuary. We're also coming around to board election time again, so if you are interested in serving on the All Souls board, there's info in our order of service. The community garden's gearing up. If you saw our side yard, we had to move it because Head Start needs to move the fence line about 20 feet further out than where it is. So we've moved all the beds. We're going to order more topsoil, and we need help filling that, planting it out, and we have some beautiful seed starts up in the maker space that some people helped water and plant this morning. Yes, thank you. Lastly, we do need nursery volunteers. As you know, children under 5 still cannot be vaccinated, and that really does constitute a hardship for parents who might need the community of the worship service and coffee hour, but might prefer to keep their children out of public spaces that might be crowded at this time. We do have both Yuko and Julia in the nursery this morning. They kindly offered to sub for Amanda, who stayed home because the person that she nannies for is not feeling well. So we're all doing our due diligence to keep germs out of All Souls, but we also need adults who might not have small children to support parents with small children during this time. Thank you so much.
Hello. My name is Elaine Mancini, and I'm here to explain why I pledge to All Souls. Simply put, I pledge because this is my church. I'm proud of being a member here. It took only about 3 weeks for me and Alan to join All Souls when we moved here from New York. and we went to pretty much all the Unitarian Universalist churches in the area, and this was it. I love this church. The best ways to show my love, I think, are by making a financial contribution and being involved. My life has been enriched immeasurably through my connections to this church, teaching youth group, contributing meals to IHN, chairing the Strategic Visioning Task Force, serving on the board, being an usher. This was all before cancer came into my life as a part of my everyday activities, and I had to curtail my activities here. Even so, I was able to serve on the interim ministerial search committee that found Reverend Joel, and we all know how that worked out. Even when I couldn't be active in church ministries and initiatives, I never stopped pledging. Signing a pledge card lets me know that I'm part of something greater than myself. I stand in solidarity with my other congregants. I am empowering the church to empower me. We exist as a dynamic community intended to help individuals continually live up to their fullest identity and potential, to seek the truth in love. A pledge makes it possible for All Souls to come alongside you in your spiritual journey. All Souls need pledges. Just think about it. Everything needs money. The church doesn't raise money on its own. It's the people who come to our church who give pledges so that we can have a healthy church budget, a funding plan that can service the variety of ministries we have here. Every pledge counts, no matter how much it is. The vitality and sustainability of the ministries we value are strengthened with each commitment pledged. And don't worry if you have to revise your pledge later. I certainly have learned that circumstances can change, and pledges may be revised up or down depending on what. A pledge is an estimate to help the church budgeting. It's not a legal obligation. Please don't let any uncertainty prevent you from making a pledge. If you find you are in financial difficulties or come into other unexpected events, simply notify the office. The church, its staff, the minister, all of the members and friends are here for you. How lucky can we get?
Thank you, Elaine. I'm Nancy Bainey, the financial administrator, and I've been receiving your pledges. Thank you to everyone who has turned in your pledge card. If you've not turned yours in yet, we're still accepting them. Gladly. Please know that your information is kept very confidential. And remember to mark your checks and your electronic payments pledge, or whatever else they might be for, so that I can post them correctly and not have to guess. Thank you.
At this time, Bridget Perdue will light our chalice as we recite the covenant, which is on the wall behind us.
I don't think there's many people that like change, and I know I don't like change. I'm comfortable with my habits, schedules, and routines. Why mess with whatever is already working for me? I also prefer to be proactive. My worst fears are to ignore issues that results in time running out and my potential solutions being limited or eliminated altogether just by the passage of time. While we may not like change, Change is inevitable. So I've concluded that it's best to embrace change. I think the work of the All Souls Board with various open questions and consensus building through cottage meetings is a great effort in support of positive change. One of my interests is Celtic spirituality. Celtic spirituality also provides a framework for answering the various open questions for the All Souls community. In the year 563, the monk Columba and his 12 Irish monks arrived from Ireland by sea and founded an abbey on the island of Iona in Scotland. As a result, Iona became the center of the Scottish Church and the focal point of the spread of Christianity through Europe. Iona is known as one of Scotland's most important spiritual and sacred places. Iona still retains its spiritual nature and remains a place of worship today. The modern era of Iona began in 1938, when the Reverend George MacLeod led the rebuilding of the abbey and other adjacent buildings. He also created an ecumenical and international religious organization called the Iona Community. Today, the church and cloister are used daily by the Iona community, which continues the worship tradition begun over 1,450 years ago by St. Columba. The modern version of Celtic spirituality at Iona serves as a model for All Souls and Unitarian Universalism to replicate in part. The word welcome best describes the overarching value of the modern Iona community. Other more accurate descriptions are hyper-hospitality or the radical, inclusive community. Welcoming is practiced at least daily and occurs at the levels of the kitchen table, small groups, and the community at large. Prayer and reflection compelled the Iona community to action for both peace and justice. The community views spirituality as where prayer and politics meet. The theologian Raimundo Panikkar said, "Religion without politics is irrelevant, and politics without religion is dull and uninteresting." At Iona, political commitment, a concern for the social order and the whole world is intertwined with spirituality. As UUs, we need to merge the spiritual, the social, and the political in order to implement the All Souls Covenant and UU principles. Celtic spirituality as its best transforms people, broadens their horizons, finds new possibilities, seeks connections between faith and life, and coming closer to God by work and worship. The great value of Iona's Celtic spirituality is the questions that it suggests for us to answer as we partner with a new called minister. These questions include, why do we exist? How do we hope lives may be changed? What are our strengths and uniqueness? What is our commitment to action for justice, peace, and the integrity of the environment? What are the ways we try to be with one another that shapes how we respect and honor our differences? As we proceed with strategies to implement our responses to the open questions, let our planning be guided by the examples of Celtic spirituality in Iona.
Whoa, bringing props this morning. There we go. And, yep, you got it. So, good morning. You know, I have had so many offers to help with the Time for All Ages lately, and I really value that spirit of stewardship and community. So we're going to try something that Reverend Jennifer Hamlin Nevias used to do at May Memorial in Syracuse, New York, back when she was their DRE. And I always thought it was super cool. So we'll see how this works for us. So as I mentioned before, you're good, you can cross. You're all good. As I mentioned before, yeah, I understand what you were doing. You're fine. Today's our second open questions meeting, and those who participate will be asking about social justice work, how we have moved toward justice in the past, and how we might like to move toward justice in the future. But it can be tricky, justice. That word means different things to different people. So today I wanted to tell you a story about that. Once there was a lush green rainforest, and between the trees flowed a beautiful blue river. Many animals lived on the ground and in the trees and in the water. Now, one day it rained, long and hard. Some of you might already know a little bit about watersheds. When water falls on the mountains, where does it go? I see a couple of hand motions. Yeah, it goes down. It goes down the sides of those mountains and it goes into our rivers and streams. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And the river started to get very, very full until it overflowed its banks and began to flood the rainforest. A monkey watched in fear and worry as all of the other animals tried to escape the flood. Because the monkey could climb trees, it was safer than most. All it had to do was wait for the floodwaters to go down. It even had food because it could eat the fruit that grew in the trees. But the monkey wanted to help others so badly. And as he watched, he saw a fish. The fish seemed to be struggling to swim against the current of the mighty river. It was really struggling a lot. I could see it struggling from here. Yeah, totally true. There is someone who needs help, the monkey said to itself, and it reached down to pluck the fish from the water. Now, if you know anything about fish, you know this was the wrong thing to do. What do fish breathe? You can say it out loud, it's all right. Water, they breathe water. They get oxygen from the water through their gills. They cannot survive in the air like a monkey that uses its lungs to get oxygen from air. The fish gasped like this. It couldn't breathe at all. The monkey was so frightened to see this that it dropped the fish, which luckily fell back into the water. When the fish had a moment to calm down, it said to the monkey, "What in all the waters of the earth were you thinking?" "I was trying to do for you what I would want someone to do for me," said the monkey. "Aha," said the fish, "I understand. But I'm not you. What may work for you may not work for me at all." "I'm sorry," said the monkey. "It seems obvious when you explain it like that." "I forgive you," said the fish. "And I have a suggestion. Next time, ask someone what they need before helping. A fish knows the business of being a fish. You don't have to guess." "Well then," said the monkey, "is there anything I can do that would be helpful?" "Yes," said the fish. "I am going to spend some time on the other side of your tree where the current is not so strong, and I can rest. Can you please pass me a piece of fruit?" "You eat fruit?" asked the monkey, who had never heard of such a thing. "Many fish eat fruit," said the fish. So the monkey gave the fish some fruit, and both of them were safe and happy. Now, something the monkey said might sound familiar to you. He said, "I'm trying to treat others as I would like to be treated." It's familiar to a lot of people, and it's actually part of the sacred scriptures of many of our religious sources. But
Do you know where that thing's at?
I don't, but I will come and look for it in 1 minute because I am almost done. The golden rule sometimes doesn't work because it centers us and our experiences, even when we're trying to help someone else. To understand others, we have to decenter ourselves. We have to listen and look and be open to new learning. When we treat others the way they want to be treated, we call that the platinum rule. And when we use the platinum rule, things get better for everybody. The whole community becomes stronger. That's called mutual liberation. Everybody say it with me one time. Mutual liberation. That's a very good thing to keep in mind today during the open questions meeting when we are thinking about social justice work. Not just what did we do that we liked, but what did the communities we helped like? What good and important work are they already doing for themselves? What would they appreciate help with in the future? And if we don't know, how can we find out? I hope as we go forward together that we'll use the platinum rule to help us decide what to do and how to do it. Thank you. Can you take the river with you, Liliana, as you go?
Yes.
Thank you so much to my monkey and my fish for all of their help today.
We celebrate joys and sorrows. Celebrate's an interesting word because its original meaning is simply to understand that we come back to again and again a ritual or a practice. It helps us be mindful. So to celebrate a birthday is to be mindful of how good it is that we're here. To have a celebration of life on a Sunday morning or at the end of someone's life is a reminder of how good it is for us to be together and how good it is to have people we have loved in life, even when we have lost them. So we share these in this time, this celebration, this return every Sunday to joys and sorrows, to remember that all of us have come with joys and sorrows this morning and every time we gather as a congregation. And that there are some joys and sorrows in particular that we will name out loud. A joy this morning is that Aileen Clunan will have her 99th birthday. It's coming up on the 24th. She can't come right now to services because of COVID restrictions, but she's might very well be watching online. If so, when the 24th comes, happy birthday, Aileen. A sorrow, our hearts are with Helen Dwyer. Her kitty, Frankie, died very suddenly. Was it Friday? Yeah, I'm sorry. As I mentioned last week, a sorrow that Bob Olson, who was a member for over 60 years, died a week ago Thursday. And a memorial is planned for him here at All Souls. And we welcome Brandy Rydell, Andrew Lyjak, and Odessa and Olivine back for a visit to All Souls. Sarah's clapping, yay, and I know Nasreen was really happy, yay, so I'm glad you're back. Especially welcome to the world and our community, Olivine. Looking forward to meeting you all, meeting Olivine especially. Spirit of Life, if it were possible for us to do what we are doing now, but not have to be in person, probably wouldn't need the building. Could get away with not having a piano. Maybe I could do podcasts. I don't know exactly what it is that makes it so important for me to be able to see these people, And as I look at these beautiful people, and every time I have the privilege to stand up here to see you, Spirit of Life, and live with that strange contrast that even as I look at them, and I see the face of the holy, they may be looking at me and just see Joel and look at each other and just see each other. They believe differently. They're not so sure about spirits or gods or godlets or any of that. And yet here we are. So important to be together. I know we don't understand all of what it is to be human. And I struggle with difference sometimes. But I do know that I am so grateful for these faces, these people, this congregation, and all it is able to do in the world. For this community, for its many ministries, for its love. Thank you. Amen.
This month, our offertory contributions will go to 2 refugee efforts. The first is the Hungarian Unitarian Church's Providence Charity Service. Our Unitarian churches in Hungary and Romania are part of an effort to care for more than 200,000 refugees from the Ukraine. The charity service describes the situation there. Your donation will help to provide women and families immediate aid, such as transportation from the border, emergency shelter, food, water, hygiene kits, infant supplies, clothing, pet care, and psychological support. Ukrainian refugees and those internally displaced urgently need our support. You can help ensure that families fleeing the war in Ukraine know that they are not alone at the most devastating moments in their lives. Please give generously. The other 50% of our offering this morning will go to the Exodus Refugee Immigration Organization here in Indianapolis for their Afghan resettlement services. There are tens of thousands of Afghan refugees still needing assistance in Indiana. These are refugees who fled for their lives since the tyranny of the Taliban meant that they and their families would be killed for having worked for democracy with the United States. This morning, 100% of your offertory contributions will go to the urgent need to care for these refugees. You can visit our link that will be posted in the chat, or you can go to allsoulsindy.org, where you will find a link that says, Give to All Souls here on the left side beneath the description for today's service. Thank you for your generosity in supporting the mission of All Souls and for your continued love for one another. May we now accept our morning offering.
So, conversation process, open question process, and it's an open conversation. That's the point of it being an open question. we ask a question that doesn't have a yes or a no answer, but a question that leads to more questions. Unitarian Universalists do love a good question. We used to joke that if somebody was going to terrorize us, they would do it by burning a cross, not a cross on the lawn, but a question mark. I did have my limits as a kid. There was a bumper sticker. I might have mentioned this in the sermon before. There was a bumper sticker on a couple cars in the parking lot. To question is the answer. And I always hated that bumper sticker. And I disliked it because it didn't make sense with the experience of church that I had, which is I knew how much I was loved and cherished. And I really didn't want that questioned. Love is the spirit of this church. I think you must mean it. It's in steel on the wall here. Service is its law. You know, the thing about this title that I have, minister, minister's from the Latin ministrare, to act as a servant. It means to serve. So you could put up there, to minister is its law, and it would mean the same thing. I think that your spiritual ancestors were a lot more comfortable with the idea of the word serve. Perhaps it was, it had less implications of there being one right way to do it. So I arrived here now over 18 months ago, close to 19 months ago. And when I arrived, I immediately got onto Zoom to be introduced to so many of you. It was still pandemic time. We didn't even have our vaccines yet, and I wanted to get to know you. And as I listened to your stories about how you became part of life at All Souls, I listened to joys and to sorrows about your own lives and life at All Souls. And one of the things that I heard that was really interesting to me, there were some folks that were struggling with, is there a way for us not to do politics at All Souls? Now, I listened a lot to those conversations, and I know that, as I said in my opening words, that politics is not always easy. And sometimes you really just want to come to church, be with your friends, and not have to worry about politics. I understand that longing. And I found over my years in ministry, my decades, that there's always some politics in life, just about anywhere you go. In fact, if you, to look up the word politics is to understand that there's probably 15, 20 different definitions of what it means, what politics means, but ultimately, all of the dictionaries get down to some sort of description that goes along these lines: the art and science of getting and using power. And we've been seeing some use and misuse of power in these last few weeks. One man deciding on his own to begin a war against a people who simply wanted to be free. Sometimes it's just impossible to get away from politics. And let me hold it up as my example of that this morning: Switzerland. Switzerland has been officially neutral about anything and everything for over 500 years, since 1515, until 3 weeks ago. For the first time in 500 years, Switzerland declared itself united with Ukraine and sent military assistance. Now, if Switzerland's not neutral about that, Switzerland has waded deep into politics. But then I can understand at the same time, with what you were quoting somebody as saying, Rick, that the politics without religion can be, did they say boring? I would like to have a politics that was connected to religion that would be a religion that followed something like what is in your covenant. So if politics is the art and science of getting and using power, I have a confession to make about power, which is one of the reasons I went into ministry was to get power. I'm not interested in a wimpy ministry. Oh, well, go ahead, do whatever you want. But I've learned something in ministry over the years, which is power can be such a force for good when it's given away. Ministers can accumulate a lot of power as ministers create relationships with congregations. But if we keep that power, we weaken ourselves and we weaken the congregation. You know, there's that old saying that power corrupts. I don't think it's actually that power corrupts. I think what happens is that those who hoard power, who refuse to give it away, get corrupted. They get damaged by holding on to it. Like that river we were talking about in the Time for All Ages, it overflows its bank. If it gets backed up, something gets damaged. Someone gets harmed. In fact, you can, there are scientific studies that show that people who accumulate a lot of wealth and power and aren't finding ways to bring that back into community life, they have a strong tendency to behave pretty badly. And we have the extreme example right now of Vladimir Putin, a dictator who started a war because he simply wants more power. Communities have a great deal of power. As I found that giving power away makes all of us more powerful. I think one of the amazing things about community life, congregational life, is that you come and you give your power away to one another. And what you see in return is that each of you is more powerful. And even more important than that, you as a community can become very powerful. You have a history of using your power for good. So 117 or so years ago, this congregation got started. It got its first building down on Alabama Street. You came here around 1960, 1959. And in that time, in those years, the people of All Souls, formally or informally, used their power to do things like start the Children's Museum, start a dozen social service agencies, the Indianapolis Park System. 3 of your ministers in the 20th century had regular radio broadcasts, either of a topic that they had preached on or of their actual sermon on a Sunday morning. And these radio broadcasts of what was going on in the life of All Souls had a very powerful influence on life and culture throughout Indiana. Cultural, ethical, and political influence. All Souls has helped change Indiana in many good ways. You've been a force for good. You continue to be a force for good. But that's not easy. Giving away power, sharing power, wielding your power together as a people. Sometimes we have conflict about how shall we be powerful? How shall we direct our power? And sometimes the conflicts that come up with that can be painful. In 1950, for example, a group of members wanted to restrict membership at All Souls only to white people, as if that's actually a thing that exists. It exists culturally, of course, but in the bad philosophy of racism, they thought somehow they ought to just be a group of white people. I'm glad to say that a vast majority of members disagreed strongly with that and made it clear that this church believes in justice and racial justice, in human justice, and membership for all people. It was a painful time. 50 members left to start an explicitly racist Unitarian church. I'm happy to say they failed pretty quickly. I'm inspired by your history and how you are even now. You really do aspire to be a community for all souls, not just some souls. I got thinking about your history because just this past week, George Gonis emailed a reflection to me about growing up at All Souls in the 1960s. He's lived in Wisconsin for a long time now, but he grew up in this congregation. And he'd been thinking about All Souls lately. And in the reflection he sent to me, which, by the way, we posted on the church's website in the church's blog, he wrote about growing up at All Souls and his experiences with social justice. As young marrieds in the 1950s, he writes, my parents became lifelong Unitarians. Because of the denomination's commitment to civil rights, joining All Souls was where I was flower dedicated as a toddler by the historic UU minister, racial justice firebrand Jack Mendelson. My mother, Sophia, advocated for school desegregation, and that was a battle she and my father, Nick, continued to wage with pen and voice in the late 60s. And then George goes on to write about one especially memorable moment, a moment, he writes, that was indelible. He remembers, he writes, my parents taking us to Monument Circle in the heart of downtown Indianapolis in response to the 1965 Edmund Pettus Bridge Bloody Sunday tragedies. There were a slew of other racial injustices plaguing the nation. We joined hands with many of our All Souls friends and hundreds of other people of all races, and we sang together, We Shall Overcome. We played this again later in the 21st century at my parents' UU memorial service. We played it in honor of the sacrosanct lessons that my parents and my grandparents bequeathed as our most important inheritance. I've heard some other stories about All Souls after that difficult time in the 50s, being very active in the politics of social justice and racial justice in those times. Taking a political stand that was not always very easy to take, perhaps sometimes even dangerous. So currently you as a congregation, you have voted on 2 all-congregation social justice stands, on 2 ministries. You've agreed to serve together as a congregation, as an institution, to collect your power and use that power in the way that only a church as an institution can use it. And the first way you've agreed to do that is as a green sanctuary congregation, to try to bring environmental justice to this world. And the second one is to do social justice as a welcoming congregation, working on justice for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people. Many members here also get together and form other groups, other teams that do varying social justice projects like the Interfaith Hospitality Network, caring for people who are between having homes, and so inviting them into churches and other places to have a warm place to be with their families and sleep safely and have food. So as I was getting to know you 18 months ago, I started hearing about your passion for doing justice work and your concerns about some of the conflicts you were having. One of the conflicts that some folks described to me was around the name tags. Now, at the time we weren't in the building. Man, it's cold in here, isn't it? I'm sorry about that. You know, it's that heating and cooling system. I should have added that to the joys and sorrow. The sorrow is, damn, it's cold in here. And the joy is not for much longer because you voted on the replacement for the temperature control. Thank you. Next Sunday, we'll get the temperature right somehow. You'd been talking, I'd heard some of you talking about concerns about the name tags. There were some disagreements about how things had happened with the name tags, putting pronouns on the name tags or not put pronouns on the name tags. We weren't in the building. We couldn't even see the name tags. I thought, I'm not going to try to delve into that. What are we going to do? Sit in the parking lot and pass them around? Yeah, I'm not going to do that. But then last summer, Phil Soper, who's made this beautiful chalice table, this beautiful pulpit, made a beautiful name tag rack that's out there in the hall. It rolls around beautifully. It looks really great. I'm really jealous of his amazing cabinetry skills. And I got to looking at that, and we were going to be coming back. I was hoping, we eventually came back in late October, and I thought, I could spend some time finding out about the name tags, but I want to get nice looking name tags that fit onto this great new name tag rack. And I don't know what happened, and I'm not sure that we can ever figure out exactly what happened, but I'm going to replace them all. So if you're wondering why your name tag was all new all of a sudden, it's because the minister exercised some power and really didn't share it very well. So the thing about the pronouns, if you're wondering, what the heck is Joel Miller talking about up there about pronouns? So this is a welcoming congregation thing. You've agreed to be a welcoming congregation. That's part of your ministry together. And so when you agreed to it, really in those days, that just meant we're going to welcome gay people and lesbian people. And since then, it's not just L and G, but it's LGBTQIAAS, and I'm forgetting 7 or 8 more. In fact, no, wait a minute. I think my daughter told me recently there's about 80 of them now. So you can't memorize them all anymore. So it changes what it means to be welcoming all together. I'm not going to be able to settle with you the issue of the pronouns. That's not my goal today. But if you're wondering what I'm talking about with the pronouns, let me just tell you, the love of my daughter's life, the person she's getting married to this summer, Holland is transgender and non-binary. And so they use the pronouns they and them. So when I go to see my daughter and her partner, I'm always very sure, if I'm talking about Holland with Susan, for example, I'll say, hey, are they gonna grill today? Because Holland is really great at barbecue. And my daughter will say, yes, they are, and they've got some chicken planned. I'm very happy about that. But that pronoun is really important to them. If you meet Holland, if this whole concept is new to you, you'll find yourself very confused because you'll be thinking, wait a minute, is Holland a boy or a girl? And Holland is very happy to tell you, Holland is just Holland. And the other genders, Holland's just Holland. That's all I can say about Holland. And that's why they ask you to use they as pronouns. If you're new to that could be really confusing. Happy to talk with you by phone about it later. I changed those name tags out, though, because I was thinking, I did it as an interim minister. So there was a little conflict over it. Here's the thing, how shall you make change in the world as individuals and as a congregation? And you do it by giving away power. And you do it by doing it the way your covenant calls you to do it, in service and in the spirit of love. Give power away and do it kindly, and take power from others and receive it with kindness and responsibility. And take the time, as you do, to find out how to do that in the story about the monkey and the fish. The monkey thought the monkey knew what the fish needed. But the platinum rule is to love others in the way, to serve others in the way that they need, not in the way we think they need. Do unto others as they wish to be done unto, rather than the way we want to do. So the upshot of the platinum rule is, what's that look like in congregational life? And it looks a lot like what we're going to do after the service, which is have a town hall and talk about what is it that gets us fired up about doing social justice? What might get in the way of doing that? How shall all souls make change in the world? I could give you, I think there's actually a simple answer to it, which is to share power and love one another. I mean, maybe there's a short answer to that. But there's actually a process. The process, in a sense, you're practicing how to talk about how are we going to make change together as all souls? How do we want to do that? And it's a series of conversations, very much like the ones we had with the first open question. How shall we make all souls a soft place to land? There's no minister that can come and tell you how that has to be, because that's really not how life and the universe works. It's the web of relationships you create, and in those relationships, the sense of safety you can find, the sense of trust you can have, giving away your power to one another. If somebody is, let's say somebody who's evangelical and really doesn't think much of Unitarian Universalists is watching online right now, this is the point at which I'd say, so when all these folks here at All Souls have come to understand how to share this power together, how to be political in a way that's kind and loving, look out. All Souls will continue to do much of what it has done in the past, make a huge difference in the world, and still keep a place for everyone, for all souls, not just some souls. One of the things you'll find as you talk about doing ministries together or serving together is that congregations eventually come to an agreement about things like, let's be a welcoming congregation. They vote on it, and 98% of the congregation agrees, yes, we're going to do that. 2% doesn't. There's always going to be members of the congregation who say, you know, that's not, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with that yet. Or actually, I don't really quite agree with that, but I still feel like I belong at All Souls. And that's life in church. There's always that discomfort that you're never going to find that everything's settled and fixed, that you can get to that one place that's just free of politics. It's probably not a real place. What is real is a depth of love and service that transcends the smallness of those politics that aren't shared power. What is real is just looking at someone and finding out from them how it is they need to be served and how to be loved, and in the same way hope that they do for you the same. So the one thing about this town hall is that, yes, it's practice, but it's not just practice. Your board of trustees is actually taking lots of notes. They're listening carefully. And in the short term, they're trying to figure out how do they need to best serve as members? How do they need to best serve together so that they empower you? That you feel loved when you come to All Souls. That All Souls uses its resources for the greatest good and in reflection of who you are as a people. Yeah, I came into ministry because I wanted power. I wanted this kind of power, the power of love, the power of service, the power that a people who cherish one another, the kind of power that changes the world and changes the world for the better. I'm grateful for you. Go out, be powerful, keep being powerful together. I look forward to hearing from afar after you call your next minister how you and your next minister choose to be powerful, loving, and serving together. What hymn do you have for now? Can we do number 169? It's We Shall Overcome. You know, I realized I added this story that George Gonis talked about. Excuse me, George. George Gonis, Sandy knows George, so she got me to pronounce it correctly, was played at his parents' memorial services. We Shall Overcome. It's 169. I'm going to invite you to stand or sit as you are comfortable as we sing together. Can you play it through once for us, Liz? She's doing this cold, so be kind. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. Go now out into the world, remembering your power. And when you've forgotten it or can't find it, we will be here, reaching our hands out, listening, loving, finding ways to serve. Go into the world, know that you are loved, that you are powerful. We'll be together again. Go in peace, be in peace. Amen. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Thanks, Rick. Appreciated your story.
Good.